Hello everybody, and welcome to the next in our series of animals in the Bible. This is a series that we've been working through. We've covered lots of animals so far, and welcome to you. It's good to have you listening, and this is our family-friendly version, and we're going to be thinking about the worm today, the worm in the Bible, what we can learn about the worm, and my name's Tom. I'm here with Ben and Pete.
Hello.
And
Hello.
As ever, cornerstonechurchkingston.org is the place to go for lots of other resources. And we are going to begin, as usual, with some fun facts or a quiz about the worm.
Yeah, I've got some facts about the worm, so you'll know lots more about them after this. So first of all, how many hearts does a worm have?
Gosh, how many hearts?
Yeah, so apparently they've got single-chambered aortic arches, which function similar to a heart. So they pump blood around the little worm's body, and they have a number of them. How many do you think they have?
Gosh, well, won't they differ from worm to worm?
I think that this is universal to worms.
I would imagine they'd have loads, because you can chop a worm, a saddleback worm you can chop in half, and it will. They both survive, don't they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what we give us a sort of rough idea.
3, 4, or 5?
I'm going to say 5.
5?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've literally got no idea, so I'm just pulling a number out of the air. 4.
The answer is 5.
Yeah.
Worms have 5 little hearts to pump blood all around their body, and apparently they're quite close to the head of the worm, most of them.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, here's the next question. If the average lifespan of a worm is about 2 years, that's true. They can live up to 2 years. How long do you think they can live up to? So if they live on average for 2 years, what do you think a really old worm could be?
There are
Depends
different
on the
types
species,
of worm, doesn't it? Yeah.
If this is like the
this is true.
earthworm or something. Or,
Yeah, I don't know what
Well,
but,
I'm sure there are worms that can go 100 years or something.
Okay, 100 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's just say it's the common British earthworm.
Well, that's a different
so
thing.
I don't know.
So this is the average composting worm.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different. I'm not going to say 100 years then. That's not. I'm sure there is
the
a
one
worm.
you'll find in your garden.
Okay.
Okay. 5.
Okay, 5.
The highest it goes up to.
Yeah, up to.
Well, they can lie dormant, can't they? They go to sleep in the winter and 7.
You're close. 8 years.
Right.
So if you see a worm, it could be almost as old as you are, boys and girls.
Wow.
Right, last question.
Does it move slightly slower?
When it's
Sort of
old,
glasses
they have a little walking stick.
Glasses.
Right, how are baby worms born? Are they born from eggs? Are they born from just little baby worms, or do they hatch from cocoons?
Well, I mean,
Eggs born or from cocoons?
Well, I think it must be similar to snails and slugs. It must be eggs. I've never even thought that a worm could give birth to live wormy young.
I can't think it's a cocoon. That's not right. So that's a tough one. I actually don't know. I'm going to say eggs.
The answer is cocoon. Baby
Wow.
worms hatch from cocoons. I don't know what the difference between a cocoon and an egg is, but I think it's something to do with the when a mummy and a daddy worm make the cocoon. I think they make a cocoon rather than hatch eggs.
I'm going to look into that. I don't know anything about that, and therefore I want to find out more.
There you go. So there you are. 3 facts about worms.
Thank you very much. Right, well, there we go. Now that we're suitably enlightened, we're going to have a look to the Bible, and we're going to learn a bit about the worm. And perhaps surprisingly, the worm is really linked to some quite shadowy, dark stuff in the Bible, isn't it? So the worm tends to find itself in parts of the Bible where there's judgment or death or decay. And there's a couple of stories that we could pick out, but we're just going to read a story from the book of Acts, and this is chapter 12, and it's about the life and the death of a king called Herod. And Ben, have you got that open? Are you going to read
I
that
do,
for
yeah.
us? Yeah.
So Herod thought he was very important, and he thought he was more than just a man. And we'll see what happened to him. We're picking up the story in verse 21 of chapter 12 of the book of Acts. On the appointed day, Herod, wearing his royal robes, sat on his throne and delivered a public address to the people. They shouted, "This is the voice of a god, not of a man." Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, an angel of the Lord struck him down, and he was eaten by worms, and he died. But the word of God continued to spread and flourish.
Amazing. Go on, open up that for a bit. What's going on there then?
Well, Herod obviously thought he was more than just a man. He thought he was a god. And he's there, he's the king, he's wearing royal robes, so he's wearing clothes that are more special than everyone. He sat on his throne, so he's not just on a normal chair, but he's in the place where he thinks he's powerful. And he's delivering a public address to the people, so he obviously loves the attention of the people. He wants to tell them things that they want to hear. And they believe him. They believe this picture that he's made of himself, because they shout back to him, "This is the voice of a god, it's not a man." And because Herod believed that, because he wanted the people to believe that, because he didn't give praise to God as the only real God, an angel strikes him down and he dies and he's eaten by worms. And it's amazing because someone who thought themselves were so powerful, in the end, are eaten by worms. Something as small and wriggly and disgusting as a worm.
He's a big bully as well, isn't he, Herod? The whole Herod family are. And they're against Jesus, and they're against the preaching, the telling people about Jesus, the word of God. So this is, a man against the word, and if you're against the word, you get the worm. So it's showing us that the big bullies, the big powerful people, the tiny little thing that you can't hardly see is the thing that's going to bring you down. And it's true even with if you've, I don't know whether you've done history, but you may know about Alexander the Great. He was a fantastic man, that powerful man that had a great army and was just basically conquering the world. And he was only about, I think, 30 or maybe less when he was brought down by a little mosquito. And it killed the Alexander the Great. Well, there was a little mosquito that beat him.
It's humbling, isn't it? Yeah, so when you look out in your garden and you see a worm, you can ask yourself, what's it doing out there? And the worm is breaking stuff down, isn't it? That's what it does. It eats and it feeds on organic stuff, and it eats it and breaks it down and helps the soil and that kind of thing. And the worm in the Bible is about breaking down pride, isn't it? It breaks down sin. It causes sin and pride to fall apart, which is what we see with Herod. And that's kind of true in lots of places in the Bible. But there's another use of it, isn't there, in Psalm 22, which is a little bit different from that, but also the same in some ways.
Yeah, so Psalm 22 is a psalm written many, many hundreds of years before Jesus walked the earth. But it really is about Jesus. I mean, David wrote it, and he's sort of looking forward in time. And Jesus quotes this psalm when he's on the cross, dying for our sin, where he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So he's quoting the psalm, and then in the psalm you've got this description that how he now remember who Jesus is. He's the king of the universe. He's the maker of everything. He made worms. He made camels. He made elephants. He made the whole universe, the sun. He's the great creator God. And yet on the cross he says, "But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by men and despised by people." Tread on him, squidge him. He's nothing important. He's just a worm. That is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And the worm, it sort of represents, as we've said, the judgment of God and God's anger and God breaking sin down. And on the cross, that was what was happening. Jesus was taking the judgment of God. The things that we've done wrong were put on Jesus. And so he felt like he was a worm. He felt like he was under the judgment of God, and he was coming under that.
It's amazing how much he loves us, isn't it? That he'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Even though he's the perfect king of heaven, and in one sense he's got nothing to do with the worm. He doesn't go to the place of decay and pride and breakdown. He's like as much the opposite as Herod as you could want to be, and yet he goes to that place and he dies for all the mess and the wrong stuff we've done, and he goes to that place of decay for us. And yet that's not the end of the story, is it?
No.
It doesn't stay there.
Has a happy ending, because there's another psalm that says about Jesus, "You will not let your Holy One see decay." And that's God talking about Jesus. He's not going to let him see decay. So even though Jesus dies and is like a worm on the cross, he's not going to stay in the tomb and be eaten by worms. Jesus wasn't eaten by worms. He was raised to life again. And then he went into heaven to sit at the right hand of God. And that's where he is now. He hasn't been eaten by worms. You can't find his skeleton on earth because he's in heaven. And Jesus is called the head of the body, which is the church. And so if Jesus is the head and we're the body, if we believe in him, he's been raised to life. He hasn't been eaten by worms. We will be raised to life as well. We won't be eaten by worms. We will have new bodies and we'll live forever. And that's the good news about Jesus. He's the Word of God. And so you've got these two options in life. You've got the worm. Are you going to be eaten by the worm, or are you going to follow Jesus, the Word, and live forever?
So that is amazing, isn't it? So when we look at a worm, and it's worth, go out and dig.
Yeah.
You'll find one
Won't
quickly.
take long. No,
won't take long. You'll find a worm, and you can look at that and think about, hey, the great creator of the universe. He didn't actually become a worm, but it was like he was like a worm. And then all of the things that we just heard, it is just fantastic, isn't it?
It is very good. All right. Well, thank you for joining and for listening. And I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And you can join us again next week, where we're going to be thinking about another animal. And if you've missed any of the podcasts in this series, then you can download them, or you can say to your mum or dad, next time we're in the car, I want to listen to one of these. Can you get it on, please? And so make use of all the different animals in this series. Thank you for tuning in.